Go Washington Commanders next on the list here. Again, another team, rookie contract quarterback, money to spend. And it's interesting to me when you say, hey, new GM, Adam Peters, here's the – not only do you have to choose the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and you could say, hey, that was by that time the consensus number 2. There may have been some debate between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Did he make the right move? Obviously, Jaden Daniels is the right move there. And that's not even a knock on May. I just think we know what Jaden Daniels is. But after that, like, how are you going to build this team? Are you going to be uber aggressive and spend money with Jaden? Yes. And not just spend money, but spend draft capital too. And I like the mix of Washington drafting in volume last year, only 5 picks this year, but I think they did well with those picks. But going to get Laremy Tunsil was very creative, Sam. When we were sitting here and fixing every team in 5 minutes mode, and you're looking around the league and it's like, man, I feel bad for the teams that need a tackle. If you really need a tackle or 2, and you could put Washington in that category, could have used upgrades on both sides. You needed a tackle or 2. Yeah. You had to get creative to go get a Tunsil. I hear Texans fans, do you know what you're getting in Tunsil? Yeah, like a really good pass protector, maybe had some penalty issues at the wrong time last year. I get it. But you don't find a lot of Tunsils out there. Peters got creative to get him, was aggressive to get Marshawn Lattimore. That might be the riskiest one, I think, to go get Debo for a 5. I thought they did a really nice job adding some impact pieces, but also not completely sacrificing the youth in Washington.
Yeah, this was a really interesting offseason because one of those things when you find your quarterback, right? The rookie quarterback contract, that's the jackpot. That's what everyone's searching for. Really, everyone is targeting a Jaden Daniels, right? What looks like an elite young quarterback on a rookie contract. Like that's the absolute jackpot. And once you get that, for the next couple of years, you're going to have this huge advantage relative to everybody else in the NFL in terms of that contract and what it allows you to do and where it allows you to spend. So how do you deploy that advantage? And, a lot of teams will then target like who are the players we want to retain or who's the big free agent we can bring in. Washington instead went, well, who's available on the trade market that is already sitting there on a sort of relatively bloated contract that may be available. And we're going to flip low picks to bring in potentially elite players who are on big money, right? So they bring in Laremy Tunsil and Debo, let's say, is the 2 most obvious and biggest additions there. I mean, Tunsil is a top 3 pass blocking left tackle in today's NFL. Now, is he a perfect player? Absolutely not. He does have more penalties than you would want. He's not the best run blocker in the world, though that's probably overstated by some people. And certainly from hearing Houston media and Houston fans talk about him, he may be a suboptimal locker room presence. Let's put it that way, right? And that is interesting, especially because we talked about this with the Lions pre-draft, right? For a team that places a lot of value on culture, can you make exceptions every now and again? And we were like, would the Lions ever draft a James Pierce Jr. based off the fact that they covet culture and he might not be a culture fit? Washington, remember, the first thing Dan Quinn did was everybody he brought in was a culture fit, right? I don't even care if they're good players or not. We need somebody to come in and be a leader and reset the culture of this building. Like the next season, they then go and make it a culture fit exception, potentially, in Laremy Tunsil because he's that much of an upgrade at left tackle, at still the most important position on the offensive line. That allows you to flip Brandon Coleman to the other side. He can now compete with Andrew Wiley. 2 guys can compete and maybe be the answer at one spot. So now you've got an elite caliber left tackle, a solid center, a very good, if not elite, right guard in Sam Cosmi, and then 2 spots that are a little bit up in the air, Nick Allegretti at left guard, Brandon Coleman, Andrew Wiley at right tackle. But we've got something to work with there. That's a big upgrade on the offensive line. Deebo Samuel has been a unique playmaker in the NFL. We don't know quite what kind of deployment he will have in Washington. Will he lose a lot of the running back stuff? Will he be more of just a wide receiver? Either way, I think he's a major upgrade over what they had. Even if he's not, even if he doesn't get back to peak Deebo Samuel, I think if you limit him to just the current version of just the slot receiver version of Deebo Samuel, it's an upgrade over what they had. And now you start to look at a receiving core that's got McLaurin. They brought in Michael Gallup as a buy low, see if he can get back to where he used to be. Noah Brown is a useful receiver. Debo now there. Like, this is an interesting receiving core they've got now. And, they made some moves in the draft.
Hey, guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. In addition to, just from a free agency perspective, brought back Bobby Wagner for a year, brought in Jonathan Jones for a year to potentially start at outside corner. And the draft moves complement a lot of those moves there. Josh Connerly with their first round pick at tackle. Okay, he competes at right tackle right away with Brandon Coleman. Maybe Coleman goes to left guard. All of a sudden you have some depth here where there's like 7 potential starters there, including Andrew Wiley, rather than just 4 starting caliber players for 5 spots, say. So there's more musical chairs potentially on the offensive line. Trey Amos at corner with Jonathan Jones in there on 1 year. Amos battles him for playing time on the outside, and just see what happens, right? So I love that the depth play there. Did they overpay maybe for a guy like Javon Kinlaw? Maybe, but again, I would like to see that money. So kind of what you were saying, like there's not always another player available. The other thing I would highlight, there's not always something else to do with your $5 million. So say, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth. Like Kinlaw, like if you only got Kinlaw for 10 million, I'd be like, hey, that's a pretty nice move there. Yeah, he's a good pass rusher. But you tack on 5 million and now it's 15 million per year over the next 3. The next $5 million isn't always, okay, well, now you missed out on this starting linebacker. Now you missed out on this, it's not all I'm not saying don't be smart with your finances. It's just not always 1-for-1 in a first contract quarterback world, right? I think you can get away with more overpays there, so to speak. So that's what I thought was interesting about Washington here. Is the other thing I'll say, we went into this free agency period saying, well, guys like Javon Kinlaw are going to get overpaid because it's a weak class. It's a terrible class. And so if you have a first contract quarterback and money to spend, you do it creatively by making some trades. And it's like, I would rather spend my money and give up draft picks too, but spend my money on the Tunsils and the Debos of the world, because what else was I going to do with that money in free agency where the class was not very strong?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a perfect offseason. I mean, there are things that I don't love about this offseason. Paying Kinlaw that contract is one of them. Even I think I would have saved that money and tried to find a different option at that spot. But anyway, there's that, and there's the fact that if you want to criticize their draft, and a lot of people hated this draft, it's because they didn't necessarily target acute areas of need. And the biggest area of need for this team, basically since they dealt away their edge rushers, has been edge rusher. And they were in position. They could have drafted a Donovan Ezeraku, say, with their first round pick. Instead, they go with Josh Connerly. Like, if you want to criticize this draft, you would say they did not target the areas of weakness, right? We thought they needed an edge rusher, principally. We thought they needed safety. They could have drafted, safety in the first round as well. They didn't do that. And they didn't really hammer those later on either. Like, that's the area where you'd say, okay, I think this was a really good offseason. They've basically brought in a lot of players that should upgrade. They do still have sort of fairly acute areas of need, even now, May the 5th, as we're in this world. And they may be a perfect example of, like, if there is a guy who gets cut or if there's somebody still available, like, they might still be working to fill those spots.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest about the Commanders last year. We do a lot of our analysis based off looking at the depth chart, looking what's on the team. I don't think you're looking at that team even last year and looking up and down that depth chart saying, oh, yeah, of course, this was a Final Four team. And when you look at the Eagles and the Chiefs and you look at the Lions, who I know the Commanders beat, but you looked at other rosters, it's like, all right, these are Final Four type of teams. The Bills, the Ravens, those are teams you see in the AFC, NFC Championship. The Commanders overachieved last year, maybe in part because Jaden Daniels is a future MVP and a superstar, and that's fine. But, yeah, I think there's still more work to do, and that they're just moving in the right direction with this offseason. And I certainly wouldn't put them as far as like non-QB roster strength in the top 5 or anything like that, but they're moving in the right direction, even if there is more work to do.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.